Hello, everyone. It's Mike at Inspiring Harmony with another lesson about leading with grace. This particular lesson about discipline is one that took me a while to figure out, well into my adulthood, I'd say, and I suspect that might be true for some of you as well. Before I get into it too much, let me just tell you a little bit about where I came from so you understand more about me and my background. I grew up in Southern Illinois in a couple of small towns in a fairly provincial setting where my life was mostly wrapped up in my school, my church, my friends, hunting and fishing, country music, gospel music when it came to the church. So it was a wonderful way to grow up, but again, in a fairly provincial way. I was actually fairly bright when I was a young child, precocious enough to have some interest in a lot of things, particularly music. And I was lucky to have an organist at a church who wanted to offer me piano lessons, and that gave me a chance to kind of get started with the piano. I took to it very quickly, and turned out that I was reasonably good at it for a child. And so I had a lot of fun in not only lessons, but in playing for church as well. Got to the point where I could improvise pretty well, could read music fairly quickly, and made me feel like I was actually good enough at it that I didn't really need to practice very much. And so I didn't practice all that much. I just kind of sat down and did what I did and got praised for it. And, that was kind of enough to keep me going for a while. So when I got into high school, I was studying piano with a professor at Southern Illinois University in Carbondale by the name of Dr. Robert Mueller. Dr. Mueller gave me a Mozart piano sonata that he wanted me to learn and bring back the following week to my next lesson and play the first movement for him. So I was so cavalier by that time that I just didn't feel like I really needed to practice. I would just come back and sight read it the next week. So the sonata that he gave me, you've probably heard, it's the D major Mozart piano sonata that so many young people play in their early years. The beginning of it goes like this. No, that was close. Something like that. Anyway, so I went in the next week and I played the first movement of this, sight read it reasonably well and looked at Dr. Mueller with some degree of satisfaction, self-satisfaction, and said, "So how was that?" And his answer was, "Well, gee, Mike, that was pretty good. So just imagine how good it would be if you actually practiced." So that knocked me down a notch or two. Kind of got me thinking. And when I later, in my junior year of college, transferred to the University of Iowa, I studied with James Avery, a piano professor there, who really set the bar higher for me and really insisted that I practice. So I got serious from that point forward, practiced a little more, became more disciplined about it, and actually made some progress. I found that being a truly expressive musician requires countless hours of practice, and I think that similarly, being a leader of any sort requires discipline rather than just simply shooting from the hip, which can just lead to a quagmire of problems. One particularly elusive skill I find for leaders is the ability to recognize the art of the con, which sounds more insidious than I intended. I'm really speaking of the ability to be able to read people, to see what their true intentions are. If people are trying to con you, so to speak, in that they want you to think a certain thing or believe a certain way or agree to a certain thing, you have the ability to see through that, to know what their true intentions are. I remember when I was growing up, I would see adults around me that I thought were so street smart, so savvy that no one would be able to put anything over on them. The saying that if it looks too good to be true, it probably is, really rang true for those people. I remember in the 1980s, I did a little work as a jingle singer. You remember jingles back in the day when people would actually sing, for TV commercials and industrial film and that sort of thing. Things like, 2 scoops of raisins and, I'm stuck on Band-Aids and those kinds of things. So I wanted to get into that. And I had conducted a new piece written by a composer in Chicago who happened to be a jingle producer. And so he said, if I can ever do anything for you, let me know. And I said, actually, I've always wanted to try my hand at jingle singing. Do you think you could help me make a demo? So he said, sure, he could do that. He had some tracks that he'd let me use. And for only $1,000, he would record my voice and put it over these existing tracks and make a demo for me. Now, the truth is, I wasn't conned. $1,000 might even have been a reasonable price, but nonetheless, I agreed to do this, and you'll get the point of the story when I come to it. So I agreed to go into the studio and made a recording, several different cuts, including, I'll play you an example. Here's one that I did all the vocals for a 7-Up commercial. Listen to this.
7-Up, the cool refresher. When it's hot and you need to cool down, a roaring dry thirst can really get you down. Just turn to the cooler one. It's 7-Up, the real refresher. Take the lead with the one you need, the one you know and trust to never change indeed. Just be cool and hip and treat yourself to the clean one. 7-Up, 7-Up, 7-Up. Day or night or any time between. Stay away from colas, make the ladder scene. It's cool and clear with a taste you can't beat. Get the real thing with 7-Up. Go wild with 7-Up.
Sounds a little dated now, doesn't it? Anyway, I was quite proud of it, and so I took it around to various places to show it off. Even took it with me on a trip to Iowa, back when I was driving a Volkswagen Beetle, and I took it to a garage that I liked. It's in Solon, Iowa. It was a single man that ran this little garage attached to his house, and I always took my car there to get it worked on. So I took it with me and told him all about it, and he said, yeah, sure, I'd like to hear it. So I played it for him, and when it was done, I said, so what do you think? And he said, that's pretty good, Mike. And I said, yeah, I thought so. As a matter of fact, the producer that helped me make it, said, I'm going to make a lot of money in the jingle business. And he said, oh, so he looked me square in the eye and said, is that the same guy that took your $1,000? Anyway, the point was made. And I did, in fact, make enough money to at least pay for the jingle demo. I never really got rich off of it, but it was a fun experience nonetheless. But the thing is, he was quite savvy about being able to look at people, figure them out, and have some sense of exactly who he was dealing with and whether they were really dealing with him in a straightforward way. What I've learned from those experiences and many others is just how important it is to be disciplined in your life, particularly as a leader. It's important to be circumspect in your dealings with others and to be completely devoted to your work. I find that it's easier to take the more indulgent path, to be a splashy musician, to go for whatever comes easily to you, and then once you've earned a quick buck, you can move on to the next thing. But it's so much more satisfying and gratifying, I think, to really devote yourself to your life's work and to your career, to be as disciplined about it and therefore as successful as you possibly can be, particularly when you're leading others. I find that discipline is one of the most fundamental principles of leading with grace. Thank you for joining me for another lesson about leading with grace, and until the next time, buen camino.